Due notice of today's meeting has been served to all members of the Board of Education pursuant to the requirements of law. Tina, can you please take attendance? Present.
Present. Present. Present.
Present.
May I have a motion that the Board of Education accepts the agenda for November 8th, 2023 special session as presented?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
To make efficient use of the time, we're going to use the consent agenda. The Board of Education authorizes the use of this agenda as part of the meeting agenda. The consent agenda allows one motion to approve multiple items, and such items are identified on the agenda. The President of the Board will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda and will ask board members if they wish to have a discussion or clarification on specific items contained within the consent agenda. Following the discussion, the board would then vote on the consent agenda. In addition, a board member may request to have an item removed from the consent agenda in order to vote on a motion separately. Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda, which includes personnel matters F1 through F3 and business office matters G1 through G9.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have three addendums to add on tonight's action, all in connection with the repair of the electric at Stewart School. I'm required by law to read these out in public, so I apologize for wasting a few minutes, but addendum 1, the SEQRA, may I have a motion to approve addendum 1?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have to read this now. This is related to the Stewart School electrical outage, whereas the Board of Education of the Garden City Union Free School District desires to embark on the following improvements at the district's facilities as set forth herein and as listed in the working budget. 1, emergency replacement of electrical transformer and service main providing electric to the Stewart Avenue Elementary School, herein referred to after as project. Whereas the said capital improvements are subject to classification under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQRA, and whereas maintenance or repair involving no substantial changes in an existing structure or facility as classified as type 2 actions under the current Department of Environmental Conservation SEQR regulations, Section 6 NYCCRR 61715 C1. And whereas replacement, rehabilitation, and reconstruction of the structure or facility in kind on the same site, including upgrading buildings to meet building or fire codes, unless such actions meets or exceeds any of the thresholds in section 617.4, are classified as type 2 actions under the current Department of Environmental Conservation SEQR regulation 6 NYCRR 617.5 C2. And whereas routine activities of educational institutions, including the expansion of existing facilities by less than 10,000 square feet of gross floor area, are classified as type 2 actions under the current Department of Environmental Conservation SEQR regulations, section 6 NYCRR 617.5 C10. And whereas the extension of utility distribution facilities, including gas, electric, telephone, cable, water, and sewer connections to render service in approved subdivisions or in connection with any action on the list, are classified as type 2 actions under the current Department of Environmental Conservation SEQR regulations, section 6 NYCRR 617.5 C13. And whereas the purchase of sale or furnishings, equipments, or supplies other than following: land, radioactive material, pesticides, herbicides, or other hazardous materials as classified as type 2 actions under the current Department of Environmental Conservation SEQR regulations, section 6 NYCRR 617.5 C31. And whereas SEQR regulations declare type 2 actions to be actions that have no significant impact on the environment and require no further review under SEQR. And whereas the Board of Education is the only involved agency, has examined all information related to improvement projects, has determined the projects are classified as type 2 actions pursuant to section 617.5 C1, 2, 10, 13, and 31 of the SEQR regulations. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Board of Education hereby declares itself the lead agency in connection with the requirements of the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And it be further resolved that the Board of Education hereby declares that the projects are type 2 actions and which require no further review under SEQR. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education hereby shall forward an official copy of the resolution to the New York State Department, together with a copy of the correspondence from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation in connection with the request for approval for the listed projects in the New York State Education Department. That's addendum 1. Addendum 2, I'll do it in right order this time. Addendum 2, subject ordinary contingent expense power restoration project resolution. Whereas the power was accidentally cut to the district's Stewart School and PSE&G Long Island has specified the scope of work for primary and secondary power restoration with related ancillary work in the estimated amount of $100,000, inclusive of fees, expenses, and related costs. Whereas said power restoration project is subject to classification in the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And whereas the district has proposed the action and State Environmental Quality Review Act and its implementation regulations at 6 NYCRR Part 16, and has determined that the proposed action is properly classified as type 2 pursuant to 6 NYCRR 617.5 C1 and 2. Whereas the SEQRA declares type 2 actions to be actions that no significant impact on the environment and require no further review under SEQRA. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education declares itself the lead agency for the proposed power restoration project and has determined the power restoration project is classified as type 2 action pursuant to section 617.5 C2 of the SEQRA regulations. And be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, Board of Education hereby declares a power restoration project at the maximum cost of $100,000, subject to supplementary funding as necessary to be ordinary contingent expense as necessary to preserve and protect the health and safety of students and staff. And be it further resolved, the Board of Education determines the power restoration to be unforeseen emergency expenditure, authorizes the Superintendent of Schools to appropriate and transfer such funds from the unassigned fund balance as is necessary to implement the power restoration project. And the District of Superintendents to take such action necessary to effectuate said power restoration project on an emergency basis in accordance with district policy, state law, and regulations without the need to submit for the power of restoration project to competitive bidding. May I have a motion to approve addendum 2 as read?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Addendum 3, last one, approval of the easement for LIPA at Stewart School. Whereas the electric service to the Stewart School and the Garden City Union Free School District is in need of repair and replacement. Whereas LIPA, a New York corporation, will be performing underground electric service to install, maintain, repair, and or replace a submersible transformer, a new vault, along with associated wiring on the property of the Stewart School. Whereas such project is subject to classification under the SEQRA. Whereas routine activities of educational institutions are classified as type 2 actions under the Department of Environment SEQR regulations under 6 NYCRR 617.5 C8. Whereas the extension of utility distribution facilities, including electric connections, are classified as type 2 actions under the SEQR regulations under section 6 NYCRR 617.5 C11. Whereas the SEQR regulations declare type 2 actions to be actions that have no significant impact on the environment and require no further review under SEQR. Whereas in order to perform the electric service to the district facilities, LIPA requires that districts grant an easement for the purpose of allowing LIPA to perform the required underground service and to install, maintain, repair, and replace the submersible transformer, new vault, and associated wiring in the district site. And therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby classifies the aforesaid project as type 2 actions in the New York State Environment Quality Review Act, which requires no further review under SEQR pursuant to 617.5 C8 and 617.5 C11 of the SEQR regulations. Be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools that the Board approves, subject to review by council, the 2 attached easements allowing LIPA the right of access to necessary right of access necessary to perform such electric services, and be it further resolved, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute such easement with LIPA on behalf of the district. May I have a motion to approve addendum 3?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion that the Board of Education adjourns a special session and opens the work session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's called order and on to you for the presentation.
There we go. Thank you. So this evening, we're really excited to talk to you a little bit about our highlights of our elementary programs, and then also give you an update on our ICT. That was something that we had said, particularly with the ICT, we'd give an update at this meeting. And we tied that together with giving you some, what exciting things we're doing in both of our elementary schools. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. We have our elementary administrators here, along with Ms. Velez and Ms. Clementi from Special Ed. And we're going to talk about both topics. So where do we want to start? Do you want to start with the highlights or the ICT first? Whichever one. Sure, go ahead. What do you do? Oh, okay. No, I think,
Turn it on.
do you press, yeah,
How about now?
okay, hold on.
Do you guys hear me on there?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, there we
There you
are.
go.
All right. So thank you, Dr. Sinha, and thank you to the board for this opportunity to give you a brief update on our elementary school highlights. So I want to start the presentation. We want to start the presentation by taking a look at the mission and the vision. On the third paragraph of the mission on the left-hand side, I'm going to read it out loud for just a moment because it really grounds the work that we're going to be doing right now. It says, our goal and responsibility is to help each student develop an enthusiasm for learning, a respect for self and others, and the skills to become creative, independent thinkers, and problem solvers. So tonight, you're going to hear about that enthusiasm for learning. We are going to talk to you about 3 buckets: student life, student learning, and learning from our students. Of course, across all elementary schools in New York, we teach writing, we teach reading, we teach math. This presentation is really to give you a peek into what makes both of our schools really unique. Over the last several years, Carrie and I have had the opportunity to really become more streamlined and consistent, and we want to share some of those things, those updates with you tonight. And we'll start with student life. What is it like to be a Stratford and Stewart student?
Okay, one thing you're going to hear about in both buildings are 2nd and 5th grade buddies. So our 5th grade classes have the opportunity to work with their 2nd grade buddies throughout the school year on a wide variety of activities. And in the beginning of the year, this is really helpful because it helps our newest students to the building really have someone that they can connect with. And it also provides our 5th graders a chance at some leadership opportunities throughout the year. They start off by going into the classrooms, getting to know each other. They help our 2nd graders set up their Chromebooks. How do they log into their Google accounts? How do they access different sites and apps that they'll be using throughout the year? They also do crafts together, some holiday activities, but they also do some meaningful academic work or some focused activities. For example, on Unity Day, very often our 5th grade classes meet with their 2nd grade buddies to do some of the activities and really talk with their 2nd grade buddies about the why behind the activities. So as they're stringing beads on a bracelet together, they're talking about why Unity Day is important and what it means to celebrate Unity Day at our schools.
Within the buddy program, if you think about your core memories of elementary school, having that mentor is something that's really exciting for kids. I know Karen and I spoke about it earlier this week about when you visit those 2nd grade classrooms and you ask them like what their favorite part of Stratford is or Stewart is, they often talk about their buddies and their mentors. They never want to let them down, right? So they talk a little bit about their reading and their writing with them. It's a motivator, and it's nice to get the kids together around the holidays. At our buddy program at Stratford, they're creating Balloons Over Broadway, which is a Macy's Day parade for balloons. There's some science and engineering practices embedded in there, and they're going to parade the balloons around the around the schools, like a Macy's Day Thanksgiving Day parade. So they're excited. They do appreciate these experiences that we bring to the kids. I want to draw your attention to one of the pictures up at the top where the two girls are sitting at the whiteboard table in our innovation lab. They are in the middle of hosting a live morning news show that we have developed at Stratford that starts on, it airs every Friday live right after our regular announcements. And this has evolved into something I never thought it could be. The kids have brought this to like a live talk show. They talk about things like joke of the day. They talk about, what's exciting that's going on in our school. They talk about the district athletics. And we pick our CAPE coupon winners, which is our positive behavior support plan that we have. And the students earn CAPES for demonstrating 4 pillars of character. Within when they earn a CAPE, they get put into a jar and we pull them out. And I have been in a classroom when a student's name has been pulled out, and you would have thought you told them that they won a new car or the lottery or something. They're like super pumped about it. And we have off on Friday in honor of Veterans Day, and the kids came into the office, a whole group of kids, and they were like, "Mr. Hardigan, are we doing 2 of them this week?" Because they really do look forward to it, and it's really neat. But it's also an opportunity for us to highlight Stratford's Code of Conduct, which is a student-friendly and a student-developed code of conduct. And this is where we talk about citizenship, perseverance, respect, and responsibility. All of that encompasses integrity. And Dr. Sinha just shared with me the other day that a couple of kids went over at the middle school, and it was really empowering to hear that they were all able to tell you what integrity means. And we drive that home because that's important, that we're building good character for our kiddos. And during the morning news announcements, it's an opportunity for us to highlight and bring everybody together. And throughout the year, there's a picture of Mrs. Casada delivering an assembly to our kids during the lunch and recess time, because what better time to teach those skills than when they need to demonstrate it most, if you've ever been in elementary lunchroom before. But it's just a way to, again, like one of those ways that enhances our buildings a little bit and talks a little bit about student life.
All right, on one of those pictures, you'll see some of our kiddos carrying some pizza boxes there. Everyone at Stewart School knows about and loves Pizza Friday and Pretzel Wednesday. The parents certainly love that they don't have to pack a lunch every once in a while, but it's so much more than that. We truly emphasize the service learning component that goes along with each pizza or pretzel day. Some of the causes that we've already raised awareness for this year are the Children's Brain Tumor Foundation, the Hance Family Foundation, and LLS Light the Night. A lot of our recent service learning work this month has been focused on veterans and active duty members. Today, we honored 21 veterans and members of the military, many who are relatives to our students and faculty members. We even had Mr. Muller join us. He's 96 years old, and he was once the PE teacher at Stewart School. Students are involved in all aspects of the planning for a service learning project. For example, for the Veterans Day Assembly today, they created the decorations. They wrote letters to all of the members that were invited. They prepared questions to ask during a Q&A session. They guided our veterans around the school building and prepared songs to sing for them. So it's really a way for them to have a hands-on experience and see the difference that they can make as young students. Another picture that you'll see up there are our 3 girls sitting in the corner, kind of working together. That's our beautiful Me program that we offer to our 4th grade girls. This program aims to empower young girls and build genuine confidence in themselves. This has been such a successful program with our 4th grade girls. They love the time that they have together with their beautiful Me group so much that we're currently exploring ways that we can bring this to other grade levels and even develop our own boys club and trial it out with a group of boys and see how we can help them foster the same skills.
So for moving from student life to a little snapshot on student learning. So at Stratford over the last 2 years, we have had a strong instructional focus on building dialogue and discussion among our students. This third year, we have shifted to really enhance a student's curiosity. And as an administrative group, we studied the World Economic Forum report and noticed that curiosity and grit were one of the emphasized elements of that work. And as a result of the work that we did in classroom dialogue and discussion, it felt natural to bring that work to curiosity. I'm going to give you a little snapshot of an example of that. So up at the top left, you see a teacher next to our smartboard hunched over an anchor chart about what it means to be a curious learner. She is teaching a math lesson on graphing. And because we've done some work in curiosity and what that means to be a curious learner and have developed those inquiry skills, the students decided they wanted to find the information that they were going to graph rather than be presented with the information. So they went out and they surveyed their second grade, and this is their student idea. They went out and surveyed their second grade classmates across the building, and they wanted to find out what their favorite special is. It's music at Stratford with Mr. Byrne. And after they got the information, they then developed the questions that went along, and then their peers answered the questions and then rated their questions with a rubric based on how challenging those questions were. So you're embedding these small instructional moves into a student's daily routines so that they become a little bit more curious about the world around them. Oftentimes students are busy, but we're really trying to pause and zoom out and to make sure that they understand why they're so busy and why they're doing the things that they're doing on a daily basis. Direct your attention to the whiteboard where it says, "Why do we write?" And right before the day, the teacher was preparing a writing lesson for the next morning. And she put this word cloud up there. And just to spark some inquiry around it, the kids charted the reasons why they write. And it was with no direct instruction, it was wildly profound of what some of the students were saying. We write to communicate information. We write to make ourselves smarter. We write to have fun. We write to calm down. And it was a brief but powerful activity. And then she built that anticipation and then revisited it the very next day. So we're excited about what that means to be a curious learner at Stratford. And then of course, in the middle picture there, we've got some of our writing coaches who are wearing whistles as a sign of being a coach. And that was particularly fun, but they were talking about giving some peer feedback as serving as the writing coach. They were talking to their friends about building exciting leads and building exciting transitions, and kids learn from kids, and we have to capitalize on that more as we go throughout the year.
As we met with students last year and visiting classrooms throughout the school day, it brought one very clear theme to the forefront at Stewart School. Students learn best when they are doing. Learning by doing became our theme for the school year this year. They want to engage in an activity or a project to access the material that they're learning on their own. They want to participate in as many hands-on experiences throughout the day as possible. Learning by doing has become our focus, and we're starting by looking at what are the opportunities that we're already providing for our students, and then how can we build on those experiences throughout the school day. Some examples that you can see in the pictures. We have a third grade example with a mini science experiment. Students work together in groups to explore how friction affects objects' motion. They tested lots of different materials. They charted their results on data tables. But the important part at the end was they had to come up with claims about friction. So what do they now know about friction based on their experiment? Instead of front loading them with that information about friction, they came up with those claims on their own. Another example is a 5th grade math lesson using manipulatives to find the volume of irregular shapes. So often we use manipulatives in our younger grades. We have them working with all different fraction tiles and different pieces during math. But this is something that we're being very intentional about bringing up through all of our grade levels so that children can really see the math in action and understand the concept more deeply. Another thing that we are focusing on this year for student learning is in 5th grade. We are providing our 5th graders with a few different teaming opportunities throughout the year. And it may look different for different classes because we're trialing different things. So some classes are switching classes for science and social studies. Other classes are rotating classrooms for projects. And it's really the purpose is to help better prepare our students for their middle school experience that they'll be having. The children see this as just fun. We see it as so much more than that, though. They're learning to have multiple teachers and learning from multiple teaching styles. They're really strengthening their executive functioning skills. You have to bring your materials with you. You have to be prepared with what you need for each class. And they're really building their independence through these experiences. We've found it to be very successful so far, and we're really looking forward to adding more and more of these opportunities for our 5th graders as the year continues.
And some Quest updates. In Quest, our units of study are underway in 4th and 5th grade. Our 4th grade is completing their passion project work on their personal interests. Our 5th graders are setting life and career goals. They're researching actionable steps needed to attain these goals in a unit called the Game of Life. Our students continue to revisit that overarching question of what it means to be a gifted learner through this lens of critical problem solving and critical thinking. Our students are connecting their Quest experiences back to their classroom to generalize their skills in every curriculum area. And new to Quest this year is something called Word Masters. It's a study of language and vocabulary acquisition skills for our students. They study and compete nationally in 3 competitions each year. Our students are very excited about this. This is focused on word analogies and comparisons. And our first competition is in a few weeks, so students are pumped.
So a little bit about our FLES program. As Mr. Hardigan was saying, we're really working on building that curiosity, and what a wonderful way to really ignite curiosity about language and culture through our FLES program. And we're really seeing in the last 2 years, because we've really done a lot of focused work with that program, students really excited and asking the classroom teachers, their FLES teachers, like, what languages are do we have an opportunity to learn in middle school? So there really is this curiosity that we're igniting about that language learning. So our 4th graders are currently actively developing their interpersonal communication skills in their first unit, where they're learning greetings and how to express emotions and provide introductions. Where our 5th graders start the year off with a review. Their unit is called Developing My Identity as a Spanish Speaker and a Language Learner. And they really begin the year reviewing all of the vocabulary and communication skills and presentation skills that the standards address in 5th grade. And then our FLES team has been really working on refining our curriculum articulation documents, really focusing in on that self-assessment piece. And we're working to design a rubric that the students can be using to assess their work that they're creating in FLES. We are going to be doing an intervisitation visit at the middle school, where the FLES teachers will be able to visit some of the middle school classrooms and be a part of that foreign language classroom. And then plans for our 2nd annual Family FLES Night are underway for March.
All right, so then shifting to learning from our students. And this really means recognizing and emphasizing that our students have a voice. As we did last year, we brought some of our students to the board meeting and we talked with them. One thing that, there was a theme that we wanted to connect the high school students with our elementary students. And this year already, with the help of Kevin Steingrubner and Dr. Gordon, we brought over the CAST, which is the Kids Are Scientists 2 high school group, and they facilitated a Halloween-based density lab where students made lava lamps to our 4th grade students. And it was a really neat experience, 1 for our high school kids and 2 for our 4th grade learners, who really got to understand, the different densities of different material and liquids. But one thing that we learned from that is that they really, really, really enjoy the use of the innovation lab. They felt like real scientists when they were in there. They asked us for goggles because they thought things were going to explode. But it was just they were really into it. It was amazing because we got to bring over some of our high school kids, and I think it was just as good for our fourth grade students as it was for our high school students. And I know that we talked about that during our roundtable discussions last year. The roundtable discussions, I know, Dr. Sinha has been doing it for a few years. She comes and talks to the buildings, talks to the kids. It is those like I would encourage you guys, if you're around, like definitely stop by one of those roundtable discussions. They are one, hysterical, and two, like enlightening. They ask for turf fields and saunas and pools and that.
When's the next meeting?
We have Dr. Sinha.
We just had ours. It really is. You leave feeling so great after those meetings.
But it's really neat because there's also some things that unless we have those meetings, we wouldn't know. Like for instance, at Stratford, they wanted, some more bike racks because they felt like while there's plenty of space on the cement for the bikes, they just, they wanted to like park their bike the same way their parents park their car. So we got more bike racks. It was easy. And then they also, as Carrie was talking about, really enjoy learning by doing, which there's a picture up there about Starbucks stations. We also launched this as a response to what the students were sharing at roundtables about really like a strong PBL about creating math story problems, then, serving as baristas, and then creating a slogan and a jingle for their new Starbucks drinks. And we've been working with the high school, and we're going to partner also with the high school media arts teacher. And our second graders, not to spoil this, but are going to serve as clients to our high school students, and they're going to give them some directions on what they want their slogans and their posters to look like. But it's really neat. And again, like those things come from kids because we recognize what they're saying and how they want to learn, and we're just soaking it all in and seeing what we can do within the confines of the school day to make it really interesting for them.
So as Chris already said, so many of our ideas that we've already talked about tonight have come from our student roundtable discussions, just at Stewart alone. Learning by doing, the boys' version of Beautiful Me, service learning ideas, those all have come from our roundtable discussions. And just last week, Dr. Sinha was at one of our roundtables with some fourth and fifth graders. And after we got all of their big ideas for things that they want at Stewart School, we had a conversation about how are you going to leave your mark here at Stewart School as students? And students started sharing quotes that were meaningful to them and that were empowering to them. Some of the quotes like, even the smallest person can change the world. And don't close yourself off. Open your heart, then follow it. These are direct words from fourth and fifth graders that now we're creating signs and hanging them around the school, so that they can see them as positive reminders throughout the school day. Last year, students at our roundtable discussions talked about clubs a lot. They really loved the club's experience. They were excited that we took some of their recommendations, and those were the clubs that we ran before school, but they wanted to take it even a step further. They wanted to be more involved in the club process. So this year we are trying out some student facilitated clubs, and they're happening during lunch and recess time. And we're in the planning phase because you can't just say you want to have a club and meet with a bunch of students one day. They have to create a club proposal. So right now we're working through proposals for a sign language club and a chess club. And next up are a book club and a coding club. They will meet with a faculty mentor to discuss their ideas. They have to plan out each session, what they plan to do during each session, what materials they'll need. We have big conversations about how many children should be invited to your club each session. How many children are you comfortable speaking in front of and sharing? How will they best work with you? So it's been really exciting so far, and we're interested to see where we can go with that. And a big discussion at all of our roundtables is always about recess equipment. What can we get that's newer, better? So we put in new soccer nets on our fields this year. That came from roundtable discussions. We talk about a lot of updated equipment we can get. And sometimes it's about indoor recess equipment because they want new things in their indoor recess bins that will keep them engaged during indoor recess. And luckily, we have such a great partnership at the elementary schools with the PTA health and safety team. And we share those ideas that come from the students and they help us restock those indoor recess bins. So that's been a big, big bonus too from our roundtable discussions.
Before we end with a short video of some of our students' perspective on some of the items that we talked about, I think it's also really important to mention the impact of the collaboration among the elementary team. While the buildings will always remain unique in their own ways, there's so many ideas at the table here with the elementary team, and a day doesn't go by where Carrie and I don't talk with one another, and just making sure that every idea is exhausted because there's so much here and we can learn so much from each other and also from our kids. And then we're going to end with a short video.
Hi, I'm Thomas, and why I love about Stratford is my fifth grade buddy because he taught me the cheaters with the banana tree in the lobby. There's letters on them, and I use the letters for my fifth grade buddy Sally. In second grade at the I love math because I get another thing about the sports that I like is that when we're doing it, it's usually based by season. But I remember last year we did basketball in the winter, so it helped us to have more practice. I remember we did like a hockey unit before in February. So there's also like hockey in there. So and stuff. And I also like how it's separated by season and how it's like organized well. And I think the gym teachers do a really good job instructing all the kids. And I think I'm gonna start with them too. And that's what I'm gonna say. Gym is part of it. Third grade student school. And I like about student school.
Just do it, Max.
My name is Mary. One thing is that some of the high schoolers came in and did science with the fourth grade. And we're One thing I love about Stratford and fifth grade is the focus trips we take. I love when we just get to when I was in middle school and get an opportunity to see them as much. So usually for our recent trip, we just want to pick off and we also took buses to go to school. And we got our we got a focus trip designed by other people. And we went to student school, we stayed in the recess area, and we basically had a recess during class time.
That it?
Can I just add a couple more things to this? They talked a lot about really streamlining the two buildings and more consistency with having their own unique, their buildings are still very, very much unique. Just a couple of things, Rachel talked about Quest. Rachel is overseeing Quest in both the buildings, just as Lauren is overseeing FLES in both the buildings. And this year, we're actually studying world language, where it'll be from grades 4 to 12th grade, which Judy is working with them on. So that's really exciting. And in both those areas, we've strengthened the curriculum and the teaching and learning. So that I'm really proud of. Just a couple more items. We didn't talk about this, but at our roundtable, do you remember that student last year, Hendrik, came to our meeting with the bathroom? Remember the partitions and the stalls? And it was at Stewart that one of our students were saying, oh, this was such a great idea that we like the bathrooms this way. This is there's so much student voice in our schools. The clubs last year, the sign language club, things of that nature, that came from our students, both buildings, that how much they wanted the clubs. I think at Stratford last year, we lined the fields because the students were asking for that. Do you remember that? It was right after the break. We had it all done. That came from students. And this year, you guys didn't talk about it, but we were talking about how do we take both, especially in 5th grade, Stratford and Stewart, really with the book clubs. So kids talk about having almost like a buddy from the other side of town that they can read books with or, communicate with. So that I think is another way to get the two sides of the town together. But a lot of great stuff happening in both schools.
Questions? Not yet. Any questions? No.
Okay. All right. So then our next, what we want to talk about is give an update on our ICT program in both Stewart and at Stratford, give an update on that. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Velez and Ms. Clemente.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. So as we mentioned last year, we wanted to give you an update to our ICT model at the elementary level. If you recall, there was a slight change in the foundation of the ICT model per se. It was originally 5 hours a day, and we modified it to 4 hours and 20 minutes a day, which enables our ICT teachers to also do a 40-minute resource room within their day. So I figured a good way to start this conversation was kind of giving you an idea about what our ICT classrooms look like, what the student profiles look like within the classrooms, and how many students we have who fall within this programmatic setting. So in the elementary level at Stewart School, there's a section in each grade level, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. 4th grade has 2 sections at Stewart. And at Stratford School, there's 1 ICT section at each grade level. Within these sections, there are generally between 3 and 8 special education students within each ICT classroom. So just to give you a student snapshot, we actually, and I'll talk about it in an upcoming slide, we have formed a committee that we're looking at our elementary special education programs. The committee is comprised of Desiree and myself, our building administrators from Stewart and Stratford, in addition to general education and special education teachers. We will be adding some parent members for some parent voice as we get underway. But our initial session meeting as a committee, we took all of our ICT students' IEPs and pulled them apart and looked at our students' needs within the ICT setting to give us an idea of what exactly our students' needs are so we can help further develop our programs and build upon programs we already have moving down the road. This is something we do not in such a formal manner necessarily, but this is something we do all along, and we did last year prior to making the change in the model. We really did look at our students' needs to determine if their needs could be met within a 4 hour and 20-minute day within the ICT classroom. So our total number of students between the 2 elementary schools is 1,273 students. Of those 1,273 students, 59 students with disabilities are placed within the integrated co-teaching classrooms. So that's across the 9 sections within each building. Of the 59 students who are in the integrated co-teaching classroom, 21 of those students also receive resource room services for reading. So they're pulled out 40 minutes a day for resource rooms specifically to address reading skills. 43 of those students also receive speech services, and 33 of those students also receive occupational therapy services. In addition to that, but it was lower numbers, we do have students who receive counseling, vision services, hearing services, but these were the big numbers, and we thought they were worth mentioning because a lot of our students not only are getting the support of ICT, they're getting pulled for resource room, speech, and OT. So there are a lot of times that they're receiving a lot of these services. Just a general statement that I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of is that ICT classrooms can have up to 12 classified students in them by regulation. In Garden City, we really do try to keep that to a third of the class, hence the reason why you see between 3 and 8 students within the classrooms. We really do keep a close eye on this. I remember one year giving Nan a panicked phone call at the middle school because our numbers went through the roof with new entrants and late changes and placements for students. So I think it was in late August. We broke the sections and we added an additional section to try and keep our numbers down. And I have to say, I've worked in many places. That is just such a pleasure in Garden City to be able to have those lower numbers within the classrooms. Because you can actually go up to 14, and a lot of districts do that. So speaking about our changes within the ICT model, I have to say this has really been a collaboration since its inception. I could not have done it, and Desiree and I really have to thank Carrie, Chris, Lauren, and Rachel. I mean, you guys really dug in and helped us, because with any new initiative, you really need to, you know, make sure that everything's going to go smoothly. And we could not have done that without your help. And I will let you speak a little bit to some of what you did within the buildings, but there was creative scheduling going on. There was making sure the resource rooms were aligned with both teacher skills and students' needs. There was just a lot of work that was done, work meeting with the teachers. You know, Desiree and I have been many times to the ICT classrooms to check in with the teachers and to, you know, observe within the classroom with classroom visits. And I know Chris and Carrie and, you know, the assistant principals are there all the time as well. So there's been a lot of check-in to make sure everything is going smoothly. We conducted teacher surveys to assess their needs and how to better support them. And from the special education standpoint, some of the needs we found was mostly positive responses. Some of the needs surrounded planning. And I know, again, I'll pass the mic down to you in a little bit. Those needs we addressed and we've tried to support our teachers with, and Carrie and Chris have been a big help with that as well. We've offered professional development for facilitated planning to help our teachers really know how to co-plan with their general education peers and really kind of make the most of the ICT setting. Several of our teachers have taken us up on that, and we're going to be starting that soon so we can really, you know, it's all about the planning, you know, what you do in the classroom with the kids. So, and then as I mentioned before, we established an elementary special education committee with the charge of assessing and enhancing our programs to meet the needs of our current students. So we're excited to see some of what we'll come up with. Our goal is to, you know, if we want to make any changes to better our programs, have that done before January or by January of this school year. So by annual review, everybody will be aware of any potential changes, and we can make sure when we have our meetings with families, we can disseminate the information and they can know what's going on. And the last is just some pictures from our ICT settings. I do want to say, you know, and I didn't say this at the beginning, when we made a determination to change the foundation of the ICT setting to the 4 hours and 20 minutes, that's really the foundation. We have ICT classes like our SOAR class, which is an ICT class, which is very specialized. Every decision we make is based upon individual student needs. So if a child needs more, even if the foundation is 4 hours and 20 minutes, we make sure that a student will get more. Everything's based upon the goals within a child's IEP, and we develop our programs and services based upon those goals. Do you, Carrie and Chris, want to talk a little bit about some of the work that you did with the teachers and scheduling? And do you mind?
So the elementary schedule has 8 periods for reading, writing, math, science, social studies, the special area, and then the lunch. Within that, there are 2 designated SGI times, which is small group instruction. That's where students are pulled out for any related services, whether that's counseling, resource room, speech, vision, band lessons. And then within those 2 periods, Carrie and I worked really collaboratively over the summer to make sure that all of the resource room period pullouts aligned during that time. So if there was there is a special education co-teacher present for all core content areas. The special education teacher teaches the resource room period when it is a designated small group instruction time. And I think that is like the fundamental practice of the buildings now. And of course, there's always going to be more work to be done in everything that we do. But in visiting all of the classrooms, and things are going well. And we're talking. I know it's perception data, but we're talking with our teachers, and we're making sure that we're giving them everything that they need, and just being creative with our professional developments and building in time for them to meet as a collaborative team with their co-teacher, but also meet with the other resource room teachers across the grade levels. So that was been a hurdle that we have overcome in scheduling, but it seems as though things are going well on that front. But of course, we're going to continue to monitor it and make sure that we listen to our teachers, who are doing just a rock star job of just really putting kids first.
So I think a big component of this, anytime you make a shift, there are going to be some things that you have to change a little bit. And so we're making sure that we have really strong communication with our general education and special education teachers that make up these ICT teams. Because while we want to make sure that the special education teacher is really well supported during their pull-out time, we want to make sure the general education feels supported in the classroom as well. So really making sure we have clear communication with them, because our teachers are so invested in keeping the integrity of our ICT program intact. I can speak from the history of our ICT program I was a general education teacher in the ICT classrooms for many, many years, and we worked really hard to develop a program in which it's not your students and my students, they're our students in our class. Which means as the general education teacher, I may be working with a small group of classified special education students. And as a special education teacher, I may be helping one of the general education students work through some challenges. So I may be the one that calls that parent. It might not be the general education teacher that calls. So we really are working hard to keep the integrity of that program intact. And that means having to change things up a little bit. Back to school night. It was really important for all of us, at the administrators, but also the teachers, that they were able to both be present for their back to school night presentation, because they are both the teachers of that class. So that meant rethinking what it looked like for those teachers to introduce themselves to the parents of the students they were working at in the resource room with. So we worked with our teachers to come up with a plan for that. Same thing for conferences. So we're trying to find ways to make sure that we're flexible and listening to our teachers to keep the integrity of the program alive.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
First of all, thank you to, this is a very intense presentation. I probably enjoyed it as probably second to when last year we had all our students here giving us the idea. So this is a good culmination to what they brought to us. So I guess I'm going to start in reverse here. So as far as the elementary special ed and the integrated co-taught, thank you for being quick to put some changes in effect, right? What I heard professional development, I heard planning, scheduling, individual student needs, right? You're analyzing that. And the other thing I heard was you'll be adding parent to the committee and feedback. That's key. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for all working together with that. That's it goes a long way, as you all know, as teachers. I'm going to go to the highlights, which was took a lot of notes here too. So it's certainly centered around students, right? Student learning, student life, and learning from students, right? So you kind of took what they say, the kids, the students, the most important asset that we have, and took it to the next level, right? You're implementing from our meeting last year, right? So we want to continue to see that. I think that was one of the most remarkable times when they have a voice, right? We always want to give them a voice because they leave us after 12 years, right? And then they're part of the important part of our society. We train them throughout that whole time. And, you know, you have a lot of things from some second to fifth. There's that connection that you're all making. You're teaching them how to make connections. Crucial, critical, and it goes throughout their lives. I heard that you're doing something with the Macy's Day balloons, right? Integrating science. Students are excited by that. Love to get there if I can get there off work. I want to see that. But you talked about students finding their voice, and that is so valuable. You all said it in a different way. And you as educators know that more than anyone, is that, and we know that as parents, right? Not every student is an extrovert. They could be the other half, which is the introvert, right? Within the same family. But the things that you're engaging them in, if one student changes from an introvert to an extrovert, do you know how valuable that is the rest of their lives? Confidence. You're teaching them confidence, which will take them to the next level. So I was excited to hear that. Involving the veterans, showing them the things that really matter, those that served before us, and being part of the community. That's priceless. Innovations for learning, lessons. Chris and Kerry, I heard you say, Chris, you said kids learn from kids. That's powerful, right? Kerry, you said learning by doing. Those two go hand in hand. I'm not an educator, but I see it every day, right? Because we see it in our professional world. But what I heard throughout those presentations that you showed us is that it didn't involve technology. They weren't on their phone. They weren't on their iPad. They were connecting, human beings connecting. That is the most powerful thing that'll take them to the next level. Rachel, you talked about Quest. Thank you. It's important because we want those students to find their place in what they do best, right? And showcase them. Lauren, you said about FLES. So it's, you know, it seems like this team here is firing on all cylinders. So I just want to compliment you all on that. It really shows. And you're taking the kids from one school to the next. The other thing you talked about is, which really resonates, is critical thinking, problem solving, right? You're teaching them that from the second grade. Add to that, if you can, deductive reasoning. We all have to do that. And the reason I say that is because, you know, deductive reasoning takes them into questioning, right? They leave, they go into secondary schools, they go into college, but they really have to question, and they shouldn't be afraid to question the why, right? They're handed stuff throughout their lives. How many are not afraid, are bold enough to say and question why? And there's nothing wrong with that, because that becomes a stigma. They're afraid to say. They shouldn't be. Sorry for the lengthy comments, but it was a really exciting presentation, so I was writing a lot here. You talked about roundtables and that every idea is exhausted. I love hearing that, because we do that in the professional world, and that's what teaches them to never give up on an idea. You know, I'll end with this. They leave us after 12 grades, right? They're off to college. Kevin knows this. There's an amazing book that's formed with our 300 graduates, and they put their quotes there, something for them and others to remember them by, right? It's their culmination of 4 years. What's that quote? What's that motto that they model. Maybe, just maybe, since there's great books that come out of Stewart and Stratford and the other schools, besides their photo, one of you said, I think it was Chris, you said, how do you see yourself? And I apologize if it wasn't Chris. Carrie? Carrie, not my bad. How do you see yourself and how would you leave your mark? Wouldn't it be great to let them have a quote in their book that they take home and they cherish and their parents have, so that every school they leave, from the beginning to the high school, they each have their quote, and what a remarkable thing for them to see it as they grew up in their time here at Garden City. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I've always kind of felt with special education, it's very odd. Special education teacher, mainly their goal is to almost have clientele that doesn't exist, to really work at a point where they move all of the children out into the least restrictive environment. So it's kind of like it's a catch-22. I'm very curious about the numbers and trends with ICT that you've seen in previous years. Are we trending upward? Is it something that, what are you seeing? What do the numbers look like?
Do you mean the number of students in each class, the total number of students?
Total number of, with the 59.
I think it's generally consistent. I would say, just off the top of my head, it's probably quite a few more students in ICT. I can't give you an exact number right now because we are really trying to build our program so that we can support students with greater needs within the ICT setting, such as our SOAR program. The students within our SOAR program typically would have been in a special class throughout their educational career. And, I remember sitting down with a parent and she was right. I just started here and she said, I'm just so sad. My son's been in the same class with 2 other kids for 3 years. He has no friends. And I'm like, well, that's just not good for anybody. And it was a great child. So I said, what can we do to better support him? And out of that was the SOAR program was born. So we do have more students in our ICT classrooms, even from our 812 students, pushing sometimes into a general education classroom, actually all the time for portions of the day. So our numbers in ICT, the number of students who have access to ICT has grown, but we still keep the number of students in each section to an amount that's lower than what's required by law, because I think it's better for our students to have more time with the teacher and not be spread so thin.
How about with the special class? Have those numbers decreased?
That's hard to tell because we had such a big influx of students over the past couple of years in special class. It's like comparing apples to oranges a little bit. Yeah, our 12s. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what.
Overall, our 12 or 2 classes, less sections of it and less students. And less time within the section. So even if they're in a 12, they do spend more time in other places. So I think that's the biggest change, because a lot of times, some of our students really need that smaller ratio class to achieve their goals, but they can definitely function in a very strong capacity in an integrated co-teaching class for certain portions of their day.
How has the new technology program kind of impacted planning and really movement? And also too, I know that it was mentioned the SMART goals during the elementary highlights. How has that kind of assisted you in really planning and preparation?
Yeah, are you the Linkit?
Yeah.
Talk about the Linkit, the data.
Yeah, the new data program, yes.
So a little update on Linkit is right for the phase 1 of Linkit. We are getting the teachers familiar with just their data input into the system. And we are making sure that they are well-versed in the correlation between how they collect the data and then how it's entered. So that has been all phase 1 for the middle of the year. Now, excuse me, phase 2 starts with Laura McGuire actually on November 15th, where the professional development then shifts to the data analysis after it's been in. So we're looking at it as a 3-phased approach for Linkit. But just from a perception standpoint, the teachers really appreciate having all the data in one place, and that the potential of the profile that it could build for a student, for small group instruction, for progress monitoring, and for trends over time. I think what we're even more excited about is the longitude of that data collection. So from when the students are transferring from one building to another, the profile that it's going to be giving us. But we're excited for as we shift to phase 2 with the assistance of Lauren McGuire and some data teams that we have at our building levels.
I think with the data, it's important to mention also that those special education teachers, whether they're part of the ICT teams or if they're a special class teacher, are joining their grade level teams at those data meetings. So they're a part of the larger grade level, but then there also may be a cohort of special education teachers that meet as well. So they're getting both lenses of it. And our teachers are being really, in the ICT classrooms, are looking at data really carefully so that they can have very well-planned instruction for when the ICT teacher is out of the room. So the general education teacher may look at the student population that's still in the classroom and say, okay, this group of children, I can extend their thinking in math right now. And everyone would be, I would be able to support all of those students in the classroom based on the data that I have in that activity, versus if I was going to do reading during this time, I would really need the support of my special education partner at that time.
Carrie, do you think that it's helping with the quarterlies and the quarterly goals, the IEP goals, annuals, that kind of stuff? Do you think it's assistive?
I think anytime that we're being really intentional about looking at our data, it's going to help across all disciplines and in all areas with the data. I think we're also looking at goals a little bit differently, part of this committee, and starting to look at the IEPs and really tear them apart. Are we being really great when we're writing our goals and really making them goals that are very specific to the student's needs at the time and that they can be working towards? So we've already had conversations about having meetings with our special education teachers, but also bringing in our reading specialists and our math specialists and help with the goal creation together. So anytime we're looking at data, you're going to see it carry over to all of those different areas.
That's great. The next, I guess it's kind of like a question / point. It kind of piggybacks on something that Tom had mentioned about students, the students that are introverts and extroverts. And I don't really know if there's a true solution to this. This is something that I'm personally dealing with in my job. We have roughly, with the numbers, it looks like probably about 72% of the kids are receiving speech. So if you begin factoring in OT, speech, and counseling, on average, child is receiving, let's say, sessions twice a week. Before you know it, an entire day is gone. So when you really look at that, and then, if we factor in, I don't even know if we have PT, if we offer PT service, now we're looking day and a half. And I know that I've seen trends upwards, and these are in ICT classes. I have a student that's getting speech 5 times a week. So it draws not only on the points of bringing that child out, that they're not getting that socio-emotional growth of recess or art or music or something along those lines. So I guess my question is that, and considering the fact that there are sections that we do have 3 ICT students in, if we're looking at the 60-40 ratio that needs to exist, is it possible to have the speech teacher maybe come in and just do a whole group type of setting? Because, to be quite honest, then, you look at literacy and the people, the students that are getting resource room for literacy, now all of a sudden it looks like, instead of a laser guided bomb here, I can just carpet bomb and knock everything out all in one shot. And, little Johnny, who's the gen ed side, he can benefit from it too.
You are preaching to the choir. So when we met with our elementary committee and we saw those numbers, I actually have met with a speech pathologist since, and I do think that's one of the things we want to look at. Like, how can we do this better? Not that we're doing anything wrong, but the kids who need to be in the class the most are being pulled out the most. And there has to be a better way. And that's why we formed this committee to take a look at things. And listen, just because most districts do it this way with the pull-out services, but that doesn't mean it's the best way or the way that makes the most sense. And it doesn't really integrate with the curriculum as well as it should, especially with speech. You push speech into the classroom, you're in that curriculum and you're addressing their goals within the context of their curriculum. So I got so excited when you just said that, because that's something we've been talking about. I don't know where it's going to land because we're at the very beginning stages of looking at everything. Our next meeting, we're actually taking all the students with resource room, pulling apart their IEPs and seeing what their needs are. Because resource room, a mandate is 40 minutes a day, 5 days a week. You can't deviate from that. So how can we better meet their needs? So we are looking at all that. I think sometimes creativity is the key to moving forward. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll come up with something.
I mean, just to share, the citywide director had shared something with us that was a graph that was kind of scary. I mean, granted, I know that we're talking about ICTs, but she shared a graph for that kind of aligned with the eights. These kids were out, they're out of the room on average on a 5-day week. They're out of the room almost 2.5 days. It's insanity. You can't, and we're trying to move it, but it's just, I mean, one of the beauties that we have here is that, you know, not that we're circumventing it, but we can manipulate it better. And, you know, the city is, it's a juggernaut. You can't really get around certain things, but here we do have the flexibility. So it's good to hear that we're exploring that. That's great.
And it's a fine line. Like, those students legitimately need speech
Right,
services because it's a language-based learning disability. So how do we do it better and in a way that they can get more out of their educational program while still receiving the support they need? So.
Is the counseling component, and with a when you're addressing a particular academic need, you could practice that need and then you could test that need. With counseling, you are trying to give them a skill set, and then on their own they have to apply it into an organic social situation. It's very difficult. So we're trying to get our counselors to do as much organic service as possible while maintaining the integrity and the privacy of the student. So what does that mean? We're looking at friendship groups during lunch and recess that are facilitated by the social worker and the school psychologist while they are addressing the particular needs of the student that they have to service for their IEP, but also, like you said, with the speech, reaching other students. So very much in agreement with what you're saying about looking at creative ways to make sure that more students are serviced, they're spending more time in their classroom while still getting what they need.
Can I add one more? You know, the area particularly with the speech and the social emotional, you know, I'm thinking of Ruby, who is going into all classrooms and providing speech in a way that's more language-based that helps all of our students. So we have her, and then same thing with our social workers and school psychologists, like really doing more work for all students. I think it's the best way to go. I think at Stratford earlier this year, Chris, you were saying how you felt like the program, how could we make it that the kids were being pulled out so many times that they're not in the classroom enough. So we continually make changes because you want the student to be in the classroom as much as possible rather than being pulled out so many times.
I think also as we're working on some of our curriculum development, we're thinking about these things a little bit differently. So if we're coming up with a project-based learning experience, how is that an opportunity that speech can push into the classroom? Or as we're looking at the rollout of illustrative math, can we provide an MTSS type of speech push-in for all students that focuses on mathematical language? Because they're going to be doing a lot of, you know, word problem and problem-based thinking in math. So we're trying, as we're rolling out these new units, or we're just further developing units, we're thinking of that component as we're doing it.
And I think also too, just with the groups, a happy byproduct of that is it kind of, and I'm not saying that it exists here, but the students now will be more tolerant and more accepting, whatever word we really want to use, of the children that do have the IEPs. So there won't be so much of a stigma.
I think the other thing we're thinking about and having conversations about is, there are certain students who need to, as we were talking about, need the pull-out support,
Yes.
but that we're having meetings where all the providers are present so that we're making sure there's consistency in the language and the strategies being used, right? Because there's been like a talk where if you followed a student, a special ed student, to all of their different service providers, they could all be saying the same thing in a different way.
Right.
And we know that that consistency doesn't support our students in meeting their goals. So we also try to organize like team meetings where all of the specialists that are supporting that student are sitting there, and we're making sure that they're hearing the same thing consistently from all of their providers.
And we could also still give, there's no reason why if a child is getting, let's say, speech 3 times a week, 2 are in a group and 1 is individual. And yeah. Thank you.
In the beginning of the year, we had several parents voice concerns over the changes to the ICT program, but basically the hours cut back. But it sounds like, and this was explained then and as explained today, that you've maximized the schedule to least affect those kids in the ICT class. Have we gotten any feedback from any of the parents on the changes?
Well, which is good to hear. By all teacher reports, the students, I think our biggest hurdle, to be quite honest, was change is hard. And it was a change. And, listen, even after we started, we're like, oh my God, we didn't think about the parent teacher conferences and those little incidental things, which are really not that little, because it takes change and planning. And, you guys really worked your tails off with the scheduling. There was a lot of work that was the scheduling. I don't even say potentially even it's better thought out than when we had a 5-hour model, because the pullouts are more thoughtful when the students are being told. I cannot say enough about very impressed with the scheduling. They go there and just doing it something. But the work definitely paid off. It was very successful, and I think still, if I would say this, it's just still supporting our teachers because it still is new for them, and it is a change. They're great teachers. We've got a great group of teachers. They're hard workers. They don't complain. They dig in. They do what they have to do. They've asked for additional supplies. So we're giving them what they need. They have a nice little space for research lots in each building. So, I think as we settle into it, it's going to be better, but we're still in the throes of the change, so to speak.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks. I'll just make this brief. I just want a couple quick points. You made a good point by saying you have to learn by doing. And I generally think there's probably not enough writing that goes on. I think by the time they move on up to the middle school, they're almost learning through the T's system how to write. But I think there's not enough foundation work that's done in the 2nd through 5th grade. And I know everyone hates book reports because parents, people say, oh, parents just write it. But I think there's ways to make more writing product, but in order to be a good writer, you have to write. And there's just not enough of that. And so I would take a look at the body of work at the end of the year that you're having these kids write. Connected to that, I think what is missing from a lot of this, I think there should be more emphasis on becoming global citizens and being aware of what's going on in the world. My kids included, are shockingly unaware of what is happening in the greater world. And I think other schools are really emphasizing this, especially in the city. And I think our kids are going to be at some point behind if they're not incorporating how to become a global citizen. And to that end, in the lower grades, I think it's not too early to have newspapers in the classrooms. And just when there's downtime to take a look at the headlines even, that's what I emphasize with my kids. And my kids are obviously older, but I think you can just tell by talking to them that that's just not an element that they have ever addressed in the lower grades. And so, I think they will be behind if we don't do that. So I would encourage every classroom to have, like a New York Times subscription or a magazine, because I also think that that type of writing is a lot different, short form writing, and to be able to read short form writing and to be able to analyze it and to summarize it is also different than reading a book and summarizing that. And so I also think that that's something that goes missed. And I can see it as even my kids were getting older.
Just to touch on that, I think we do a newspaper. I remember my kids going through it. Was it fourth grade or going by memory now? We do something where it's an article, they summarize. It may not be in every grade, but there is a class that touched on it. And forgive me for not remembering, but it was fourth, right? Yeah. So just to be clear, we do something, and what Trustee Gaffney is saying, that if we could do more, how do we incorporate it? So I didn't want to go on record that we don't do something. We do something, and I do remember it. So thank you for confirming my memory. Thank you.
I think it needs to be built into a lifestyle, like sitting down, got there early in the classroom, grab it, take a look at the headlines. No one says you have to read the article, but it needs to be part of the daily consciousness of these kids, what's going on. And, I can't, I have to say my middle son, who did go through Stewart, had an excellent teacher that had once a week lunch club where she did keep them in and they read New York Times articles. And that was so transformative for him that he still is able to talk about what they read at that time. And because it was so periodic, it really entered his consciousness of what was going on in the world. But that was one teacher, and that was 4 kids that she did it with. And I'm not saying it's for every kid, and I wouldn't do that, but I think that has to be part of just their daily diet.
Thank you. I guess it's time for community questions and comments. Does anybody have a question or comment? You can hear it.
My name is Erin Beaver. Almost want to start by saying that we feel specifically the ICT of Catherine Airline.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Good things we that they are communicators. I'm sure there are many others like them. But I just want to publicly say that they are coming out. To that end, I have some questions just about ICT in general, about this year. I wanted to know, is there a cap on which students are in resource room?
Yes, so resource room teachers by regulation can only have 20 students on their caseload, grades 8 and 5, and grades 6 to 12, and go up to 25.
Okay, and then I also wanted to know, how many kids, if you know, offhand in the district would be feeling, would be feeling?
It's a split. You have 2 types of resource room. Where those students get a methodology to help code. Other students get I don't know the number off the top of my head. I would say maybe 60 or 70. I don't know. I'm making it up. I don't know.
I think I see you. Okay. And then I just for general, is that like a time period that might change? Like from 5 hours to 20, what might be a change to that time span?
Discussion about lessening it all, if that's a concern. Really our goals are what there is that, I don't say downtime in classrooms, that makes it sound like people aren't doing stuff, because there are. But the bars of 20 minutes enables our students to really have access to all for instruction between special educators in the classroom. The middle school is drastic change, it drops down to 2 hours of 40 minutes, 2 hours and 40 minutes. So it's interesting. I surveyed all the districts on Manhattan, and I was actually at a conference this past week, we're all discussing ICT models. As many districts as there are, that's how many different ways people do ICT. Everybody does it differently. You need to write regulations. You're allowed to have an ICT. Some districts do consultant teacher direct instead, and they do it by subject area for that and student science. So their own teachers are only together for certain portions of the day. There are some districts that do day. Many districts do portions of the day, and it varies greatly. Some do half days with teachers, the other half days in class. Some do each, so it really varies from district to district.
I just want to circle back to what Martin said, which is going beyond core instruction, small group instruction. It's really philosophically the same thing that's happening. So participating in small group instruction, which is
No.
the last question was, I was wondering if there were any were having practical discussions.
Yes, I ignored it.
Yeah, we can talk about the podcast and shortly after, but yes, we incorporate students with disabilities into the roundtables. And then the
Yeah.
next idea that we floated was actually just doing an exclusive roundtable with students with special
Mhm.
educations. We just wanted to make sure that we streamline the messaging correctly to our families and that.
Can I add one thing to, with a question that you asked about the ICT? You know, in our district, inclusion is really important. You know, we believe in that. So with the ICT, we want more kids in there rather than being in a special class. Because I think, you know, kids learn a lot from each other. And so for us, and I agree with you, I was actually in Mr. Delwin, Miss Airlines class this week. We were, and our teachers, both, you know, the integrity of the program, that's really important for our teachers, that we hold on to that. So the time frame, I don't see that lessening for the future.
Any other questions? Hearing none, seeing none. So announcements, our next Board of Education meeting will be Monday, November 20th, 2023 at 8:15 here at the high school. At this time, may I have a motion that no further business is to come forward and the meeting may be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good evening.